And with that, I bring to the stage Miss Anna Hollis.
Good evening, all you beautiful people. Kimberly, thank you so much for the opportunity to introduce this honor and privilege to introduce somebody that I have such a high respect for and is such an inspiration to me in my role at Amachi Pittsburgh. You couldn't have chosen a more fitting speaker for a legacy banquet. Dr. Wilson Goode is truly a man of legacy. You have no idea how one individual has spread his impact across this nation. It has just really been awe-inspiring. Through the Amachi model, which we have adopted here in Pittsburgh, more than 300,000 children of incarcerated parents have been supported through people of faith like you, through partners in faith, our congregations and community groups across the nation. Every state has adopted this Amachi model, and we would not be able to boast about a 92% success rate in keeping kids out of the system, out of the criminal justice system. That's one of our mentors, Reverend Lamont Jones, and out of the system even as adults. We followed them and monitored this data, and that's because of Dr. Wilson Goode's leadership with this Amachi initiative. Absolutely. How many of you heard anything about children of incarcerated parents before Amachi? Just a few of you. It wasn't a topic of conversation. It wasn't an at-risk group that people were talking about. And so I'm just so honored and privileged to be a part of it and to be able to impact young people's lives through this program that he spread throughout the nation. Reverend Goode, for his groundbreaking work, not just with Amachi, but with many other organizations, received a number of highly prestigious awards. One is the Purpose Prize through Civic Ventures, the Philadelphia Inquirer's Citizens of the Year Award, and the 2013 White House Champion of Change Award for his work, not only with children of incarcerated parents, but with homeless populations and low-income families. When you look at the list of firsts for Reverend Goode, there's a number of accolades on that list for him. The one is that he was the first African-American member of and chairman of the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission. He broke racial barriers again with his appointment as managing director for the city of Philadelphia. And then I think most of you here know he went on to become the first black mayor of the fourth largest city, Philadelphia, and then was reelected and served 2 terms as mayor. Then went on to serve as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Education in the Clinton administration, and then really took this unique opportunity to take what happened to him as a young person when his father was incarcerated and make that available, that love, that community support available to hundreds of thousands of young people, as I mentioned already, around the nation. So I can't read anything else on here because I promised his assistant that I would not do that. I've already broken my own rule. But there are many, many organizations where he's having an impact and serving on boards. And he's actually also I do want to share this, a distinguished senior resident fellow in the program for research on religion and urban civil society at the University of Pennsylvania, Ivy League University. That's big stuff. So please join me in welcoming my hero, Reverend Dr. Wilson Goode.
Sometime I stop on my way home and I watch the children play, and I wonder if they wonder what they will be someday. Some will dream big dreams and make them all come true. Others will dream of things they will never do. But with seeds in God's hands, and where they land, where we land, no one knows. Some children will land in fertile soil and grow and become productive. Others will land in swamps, in weeds, and end up as a part of our prison industrial complex in our society. There's a tribe in Kenya that's called the Maasai tribe. And the Maasai tribe is known because there are men, warriors, who protect the villages where the women live. They are mighty warriors. They are fierce fighters. They are protectors. But I speak of them this evening not because they are mighty warriors, and not because they are fierce fighters, but because of the way they greet one another. They don't do it the way we do it. We say good morning. We say good afternoon. We say good evening. But they greet each other with the question. And the question they ask when they greet each other is, how are the children? Not good morning, but how are the children? Not good afternoon, but how are the children? How are the children? 15 million wake up hungry every single day. 14.5 million wake up every single day living in poverty. There are 3.5 who wake up in homeless shelters every single day. There are only 17% of African Americans in the state of Pennsylvania are at grade level in terms of reading. 2.5 million run away from home every single year. How are the children? How are the children? 3.5 wake up in dens of dopes rather than homes of hope. So how are the children? So I thought that for the remarks I would make this evening, I would do it through the lens of our children. Because unless we find a way to do better with our children, then all the other social issues that we're trying to deal with on the other end will become increasingly more and more difficult. Because when we fail our children, we fail to do what we ought to do with our children. That manifests itself in an inadequate workforce, in more people incarcerated in this country than any other country in the free world. In fact, if you took all of the 36 countries of Europe combined, we incarcerate more than all of them combined. They have 900 million people. They incarcerate 1.71 billion, 1.71 billion, 1.71 billion, and we have a little over 3 billion. And we end up, I think I said that wrong, 300 million and 900 million. I got it now, 900 million. We incarcerate more than 300,000 people in this country, and they incarcerate about 1.7. So part of what I believe that we have to do, that we have to understand what is happening because we fail to take care of our children. And we have more blacks, men and women in prison than we did in slavery in 1850. Can I repeat that for you again? We have more black men and women in prison today in the United States than we did in slavery in 1850. And what we need to know is that there has been a 930% increase in arrests just for drugs, and that those who come out of prison end up going back into prison. 20 years ago, it was like 25% went back in. Today, 75% go back in within 5 years. And so I want to look at this, not so much the fact that this exists, but the fact that somewhere along the line we did not do what we ought to do on behalf of our children. We did not demand a good education. We did not demand what ought to happen to them. And so we ended up with this whole group of folk who are now in the prison industrial complex in our society. So I decided, a lot of things I could have done with my life. Having spent the time that was described to you as a member, and then the chairman, and then the managing director, and then the mayor for 2 terms, and then deputy assistant secretary. There are a lot of things I could have done with my life at that point, at age 62. I'm not 76, so I just want to get that out of the way. At age 62. At age 62. But I decided at age 62 that what I should do is try and work with the population in this country that was the most at risk. That if I could do something with those young people who were the most at risk, then I could begin to, in a small way, begin to kind of eat away at what was happening in the larger society when they grew up. And 300,000 is a large number of people that we have worked with and children we have helped. But it's really only a drop in the bucket. That's all it is. That somehow 10.7 million children in this country have one or both parents either in prison, in jail, under some type of federal, state, and local control. 10.7 million children. And there's some who disagree with this statistics, and that is that if we do nothing, at 7%, I have to use my preacher voice, people are looking at their phones and going to sleep on me. I don't mind calling you out. And so 70%, some folks disagree with that statistic. You should never interrupt me with something because, when you get 76, you forget where you were. Just don't know, where was I now? So y'all act right so I can get through this in the next 10 or 15 minutes. I don't have to call anyone else out. And so 70% of those children will end up in prison themselves. So I went to a prison in eastern Pennsylvania, Greenwich Prison, and so in that prison, a grandfather, a father, and a grandson, all in the same prison at the same time. And they met for the first time in prison. And the grandson, when I was leaving, pulled me aside and said, "Dr. Goode, I have a son that I've never seen. Do you think I will see him for the first time in prison too? I want to remind you that it is possible in 2015 to have 4 generations of the same family in prison at the same time and who met for the first time in prison. And part of it has to do with the fact that we have not done all that we need to do in this country for our children. That somehow along the way that we did not go enough to those home and school teachers conferences. We did not demand from the schools in our communities that they educate our children. I said earlier that 17% of African American students in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania are only 17% are at grade level. And what that means is, since Pennsylvania already leads the nation in terms of one of the largest population in terms of prison, what that means is they will continue to do so. Because also they're failing on the front end. And so at the rear end, they're beginning to lose those young people. So here's what I know, based upon the work I've done for the last 15 years. I know that if we simply find one adult to spend 1 hour once a week, 2 hours twice a month, for at least 1 year, what I know is that 2/3 of those children will improve their grades. What I know is that 2/3 of those children will improve their attendance. And what I know is that 2/3 of those children will behave better in school. What I also know is that 90% of those children will develop better relationship with their siblings, with their peers, and with adults that they have relationship with. And what I know is that there are case after case of stories that you can write about young people who, in fact, ended up in a good place. And I mentioned earlier that my father was incarcerated. In 1952, my father went to prison while we were living on a sharecropping farm in North Carolina. While he was still in prison, we moved to Philadelphia. And I went to John Bartram High School to enroll, and they told me that I could not be in the academic course, that I should go to a course where I could use my hands. That's what I was accustomed to. And I fought, and I finally, after a year, got into academic course. Being on an honor roll, my counselor told me then that I should go and find a job in a factory. And I went and found a job in the factory upon graduation. I went from working on a tobacco farm in Seaboard, North Carolina, to working in a tobacco factory making cigars. And so part of what I'm really saying to you is that mentoring works. Because had it not been for my local pastor and his wife, that I would not be standing here today. They said to me, you do not belong in that factory. And they took up collection in that church in Southwest Philadelphia. and sent me off to Morgan State University. And I graduated with high honors and made my way back to John Bartram High School and showed that counselor my degree. So I know that you have a lot to do this evening, but I want to make 3 or 4 other points as I try and really leave you with something that will inspire you to become involved in whatever way you can in trying to make your neighborhoods better. And this is not new for me. In the 1970s, wasn't that Reverend Monroe? In the 1970s, I was working on building houses, helping neighborhood and churches and ministers group build houses in Philadelphia. So for me, this journey of trying to restore and restructure and transform and do things with neighborhoods is something I've been at for a very, very long time. And it means simply that we have to make a commitment that we're going to do everything that we can do. I don't ask anyone to do anything until I've done something myself. And I have not spent as much time with my children, with my wife, with my family, and with my brothers, and with my sisters, and my nephews, and my nieces, because I've had a dedication to trying to make the lives of others better. And even at 76 and a half years old, I'm still at it. I'm still at it. I am, and this is not to be boastful, but it's simply to say I'm still at it because there are not enough other folks out there who are coming along and saying, Dr. Goode, I want to help you do something. I'm still at it because the younger folks coming up don't understand the struggle that we've gone through. And understand what needs to be done in order to make this society one that we all can live in and grow in the way they ought to live in and grow in. So I'm going to just close with 3 or 4 challenges. I'm a Baptist preacher, so I just add. Now Monroe was Presbyterian. He could count, but Baptists can't count. and so there's some hope out there. As I sat on that sharecropping farm in Seaboard, North Carolina, and dream of a better life, I can stand here today as the 2-term mayor of Philadelphia, so dreams can be realized. When I went to Morgan State University in 1957, it was segregated, everything around the campus, and we demonstrated for 4 years. I went back 3 years ago, and Morgan State University owned this shopping center. But that's hope. When I was graduated from Morgan State University and as a 2nd lieutenant commissioned in the Army, and we got on the train to go to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and in Fort Sumter, South Carolina. Fort Sumter, they told me to leave the front car and go to the rear car where all the other colors were. But today, can I just announce to you that Barack Obama is the commander-in-chief of all the armed forces. So there's hope. That's hope. But we need all of you to be a part of this. So I'm going to challenge you, each of you in your own way, whatever you can do to do it the best way that you can do it. There was a boy who lived in this village. And in this village was the legend of a woman who was blind and old and an expert in everything. So the young person went to this house, knocked on the door, she invited him in, and he held his hand out and he said, "Wise old blind lady, I hold in my hand a bird. Is this bird living or is this bird dead?" And so she thought for a minute because she knew it was a setup. And she waited for another minute, and then she came back and said, "Wise old blind lady, is this bird living or dead?" And she said, "Young man, I do know not whether the bird you hold in your hand is living or dead. But whether that bird lives or dies is all in your hands." So what happens with our young people, what happened in our young people in our communities, is really up to us. It's up to us who live in those communities, who willing to take it upon ourselves to say, "I'm going to do something about what's going on here." And guess what, folks? You don't need anyone's permission to do that. And if they come and pretend that they are in charge of that community and done nothing for all these years, keep working. Keep on working. And then there was this woman who had a tumor in her jaw. And she went to see the surgeon, and he said, "I can take it out, but it's going to put your face in a very unpleasant way." And she said, I want to live. And so he operated on her, and sure enough, after it was over, so horrific was her face that no one could stand to look at her. And they sat in a room, quiet, for what seemed like hours and hours and hours. And finally, she broke the monotony of silence and said, "Will I always be this way?" And he came back and said, "Yes." And then more monotony of silence. Then the husband looked at her and said, "I like it, it's kind of cute." But then he reached over to kiss her and found out that the kiss did not work the way it used to, because she had twisted lips. And so in order to accommodate her lips where they were, he had to twist his lips. Anybody here with twisted lips? Anybody here prepared to twist your lips to meet our young people where they are? Anybody here willing to meet them and understand them in their own circumstance, in their own environment, in their own way of doing things? A few years back, I have 2 grandchildren, and I used to call them, and I would had difficulty having conversations with them, because when they get in that age frame, they give you one-word answers. "How are you doing?" "Fine." I'm waiting for more words. No more words come. What are you going to do today? Nothing. You have anything planned for the week? No. And so I talked with my youngest daughter, and I said that your two nieces will not talk with me. She says, text them. You text them 10 times a day, she said, they will respond to you. So every morning, I text my grandchildren. And guess what? They all respond every single day. I met them where they were. I learned to communicate with them not the way I would want them to communicate with me, but the way they know how to communicate. And now we have developed a stronger, more loving, more caring relationship by text messages. I met them where they were. And then there was this boy and his father who was watching a football game, probably the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they were watching the game, and the son said to the father, "This game is boring. Can I go outside? Come outside and play with me." The father said, "It's a good game." Must have been the Steelers. "It's a good game." Could not have been the Eagles. It was a good game, and so don't tell anyone back in Philly I said that. And so as they went outside again, stayed outside, son came back in 5 minutes. The father says, "Look, the other team scored. I need to watch it a little while longer." So this son goes back out, and when he's outside this time, the father takes a piece of a map of the world he found alongside of his couch and tears it up into small pieces. And so when the son comes back, he gives it to his son and said, "You go outside and you put this world back together. And when you come back, I will go outside and play with you." The son came back in 5 minutes with the world all put back together. And the father was amazed. "How in the world did you do it?" The son said, "That it was easy. On the other side of the map of the world was a man. And when I put the man together, the world automatically came back together." So I got one more point. Part of what it is is that it's up to us. Hey, folks, it's up to us to put the world back together for our children and for our young people. It's up to us to tell them our narrative. It's up to us to tell them our stories, to tell them from whence we've come, to tell them about the struggles. It's up to us. It is up to us. When Joshua stood before the Jordan River with the wilderness in the background and the promised land in front of him, God spoke to him and said, let the priest, anybody read that in here? Let the priest lead the way. Let the priest lead the way. And as he approached the Jordan River, and the Bible said it backed up in a heap downstream, and that the people of Israel was able to leave the wilderness and go in the promised land because of that. And for years, I only read the first part of that. And there was a second part of that I want to close with, and that was, it says, as the priest stood in the riverbed. They didn't go first. As a priest stood in the riverbed, between what was and what was to be. As the priest stood in the riverbed between hopelessness and hope. As a priest stood in the riverbed, it says all of the children left the wilderness and went into the promised land. It's our job. It's our obligation. It's our responsibility to stand in that riverbed until all of our children leave their wilderness of poverty, of drugs and alcohol and homelessness and inadequate education. It's up to us to stand in the riverbed until they leave the wilderness and go into the promised land. I know you all have had a long, long conference, but I need to know how many of you here this evening are willing to commit yourselves to stand in the riverbed until our children go from their place of being in trouble to a safe place. And so I just want, this is not a church, but I really want to do what I call a civic altar call. So I want all of you in here who are willing to take this on yourselves is to come and stand with me up here. Nobody's moving. I want all of you, I want somebody standing beside me.
Where you want to stand? Behind you or in front of you? Wherever.
So that we can move our children from the wilderness into their promised land, where they can become doctors and lawyers and scientists and engineers and mayors and governors and presidents. We need folks standing in the riverbed. And so someone asked me, why do you want people to stand up there with you? I said, if they stand up and walk up, they're going to remember they did it. I remember why they did it. Amen. Amen. Glory to his name. Hallelujah. Thank you all so much. I'm glad to be with you.